Welcome everyone. Today you're about to witness one of the most powerful and important stories in human history. This is not a fictional tale, the story of a boy who was born into a world of bloodshed, betrayal, and broken empires, and somehow, without anyone expecting it, became the most powerful man on earth. His name was Augustus. You may have heard of Julius Caesar. He was the man who changed Rome. But Augustus was the one who built it. He didn't do it by showing off his muscles. He did it with something far more powerful: his mind, his patience, his silence. In this story, you will learn how an 18-year-old teenager with no army and no experience became the ruler of the world, how he fought through betrayals, how he defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra, two of the most powerful people of his time, and how he transformed Rome from a chaotic republic into a strong. This is not just history. This is strategy. This is power. This is transformation. And if you're learning English, this story is because this video is written in very simple English, so you can understand every sentence. You will improve your vocabulary, listening, and confidence while enjoying. So, before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because here we don't just teach English, we teach life. We help you grow, and we help you become the person you were born to be. Now, let's begin the true story of Chapter 1, the boy who lost his father and found a legacy. Before he was called Augustus, his real name was Gaius Octavius. He was born in the year 63 BC. His family was not poor. They were from a class called the equestrians. That means they had some status, but they were not very powerful. But Octavius, his mother, Atia, was the niece of Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome. So, even though Octavius was not rich or famous himself, but when he was just a boy, his father died. Octavius was raised by his mother and grandmother. He was often sick and physically weak. He didn't look like a warrior. He didn't grow up with weapons. He grew up with books, teachers, and quiet thinking. From the outside, but inside him, was something rare: a sharp mind, a cold heart, a quiet. When Octavius was a teenager, he was invited by Julius Caesar, his great uncle, to join him in Spain. But on the way there, Caesar went ahead without him. Still, Caesar saw something in the boy, something serious, something different. He began to consider him not just. In 44 BC, the entire world of Rome exploded. Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in the Republic, was stabbed to death. They thought they were saving Rome from dictatorship, but they were actually throwing Rome into civil war. And then came when Caesar's will was read. The entire Roman world was shocked. He had named Octavius, the quiet teenage boy, as his In that moment, the boy, Gaius Octavius, became the adopted son of Julius Caesar, the legal successor to the most powerful man in Rome, and someone with a new name. He was only 18 years old. At first, nobody took Octavian seriously. He had no army, no experience. The great generals of Rome, like Mark Antony, thought he was just a boy pretending to be a man. But Octavian didn't care. He didn't argue. He started collecting power silently. He began raising an army with money he inherited from Caesar. He started speaking to the people using Caesar's name. He began to He didn't use rage. He used strategy. Julius Caesar had been bold, loud, and dramatic. He walked into the Senate with power and pride, and he died. He was cold, patient, and calculating. He didn't walk into power. He waited for it. He planned for it, and he would never, ever let it slip from his hands. After Caesar's death, the Senate was weak. The people were angry. Civil war was brewing again. Mark Antony, Caesar's top general, believed he would take power. But he would pretend to be weak while growing strong. He would use Caesar's name to gain trust. He would build alliances only to break them later. This was a game for the wise. Chapter 2. The Rise of a Political Killer. He was going to use something far more dangerous, his brain. He would enter Rome not as a soldier. He would speak softly, promise peace, and smile in the faces of men who planned to destroy him. But behind that smile was something cold. One of the most dangerous men in Rome at that time was Mark Antony. He was older, stronger, more famous. After Caesar's death, Antony tried to take control of Rome by controlling Caesar's documents, land, and money. He didn't respect Octavian. But Octavian had one thing Antony didn't: the name Caesar. And in Rome, that name had power over the people. He gave money to the people, money that Caesar had promised in his will. He built an army using his inheritance. He spoke directly. People began to whisper, "This boy is Caesar's son. He is the future." Mark Antony saw this, and he was not happy. But Octavian, he knew he was still too weak. So he did something shocking. He made a temporary peace. He formed an alliance with Mark Antony, his rival Lepidus, another general loyal to Caesar. Together they created a group called the Second Triumvirate. It looked like peace, but it wasn't peace. It was a cold, calculated decision by Octavian. He knew they would need each other. Now begins one of the darkest and most powerful parts of Augustus's rise. The triumvirate published a list of names. These were enemies of Caesar. This list was called the Prescriptions. It was not just a list. It was a death sentence. Over 2,000 Roman citizens, senators, rich men, political enemies, even people who had personal conflicts with the triumvirs. If your name was on that list, you could be hunted, arrested, or one of the most famous victims was Cicero, the great Roman speaker and philosopher. Cicero had spoken out against tyranny. He hated Caesar. He hated Antony. But now the game had changed. Octavian allowed Cicero's name to stay on the list. Cicero was caught. He was killed. His head and hands were. People understood the message. The boy had become a killer, and no one was safe. After the Prescriptions, the triumvirate focused on their biggest enemies. Their names were Brutus and Caesar, the leaders of the conspiracy that had stabbed Caesar to death. They had escaped to the east, gathered. So now the three rulers of Rome, Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus, prepared to march east and fight them. The final battle happened in Philippi in 42 BC. Mark Antony led most of the fighting, while Octavian was sick and weak during the campaign. But the result was clear. Brutus and Caesar were defeated. This was a major turning point. The killers of Julius Caesar were now dead. Octavian had avenged his father's death. And now the war was. After the Battle of Philippi, there were only 3 rulers of Rome. 1. Octavian, now richer and more dangerous. 2. Mark Antony, still powerful and commanding armies. But power cannot be shared forever. Soon, Lepidus was pushed out. Octavian removed him from power and took control of his territory. Now, it was just 2 men. And here's where the story becomes even more personal, because Mark Antony fell in love with Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. And Cleopatra she had even given birth to Caesar's child. This created a complicated situation. Cleopatra had been the lover of Caesar. Now she was with Antony. Antony began living in Egypt with Cleopatra. He started behaving like an Egyptian king instead of a Roman leader. He even declared Caesarian. Cleopatra's Son by Julius. This was a direct attack on Octavian. Octavian knew the people of Rome would not accept this, so he used the situation perfectly. He spread propaganda, saying he said Antony was giving away Roman lands to Egypt. He said Antony had betrayed Rome. Soon, the Senate and the people began turning against Antony. Destroy Antony and Cleopatra, but he wouldn't do it with politics anymore. Now, Chapter 3, The Fall of Antony and Cleopatra. And now, the final war between them was coming. It would not be a small war. It would be a war for who would rule the world, Cleopatra. To understand how serious this war was, we need to understand Cleopatra. Cleopatra was not just a queen. She was she was beautiful and dangerous, and had once been the lover of Julius Caesar. With Caesar, she had a child, a boy named Caesarion. After Caesar's death, Cleopatra turned together. Antony and Cleopatra ruled in the East. They acted like kings and queens. They wore Egyptian clothes. They lived far away from Rome, and they became more Egyptian than Roman. This made many people in Rome angry and afraid. They believed Cleopatra had used her beauty and charm to control him. And this is where Octavian saw his opportunity. He would make the people believe that Antony had betrayed Rome, and Octavian, the son of Caesar, would now save it. Octavian understood something very important. Sometimes they follow a story. So he began to tell a story again and again to the Roman people. Mark Antony has betrayed Rome. He follows Cleopatra, a foreign queen. He wants to give Roman lands to her and to Caesar's illegitimate child. He has forgotten who he is. He has forgotten who he is. He has forgotten us. This was smart. It was powerful. And most of all, it worked. People began to see Antony as a traitor. Octavian asked. He also made Caesarion look like a false heir, a threat to Rome. And finally, in 31 BC, the final battle took place in a place called Actium, near the western coast of Greece. On one side, Octavian's forces, led by his brilliant general Agria, a well-organized navy. On the other side, Mark Antony and Cleopatra with ships from Egypt. A large navy, but divided leadership and low morale. The battle was difficult at first. Both sides struggled. But then, something strange happened. During the battle, Cleopatra's ship suddenly left and began to sail away. No one knows exactly. Maybe it was part of a plan. But when she left, Antony followed her, leaving his own men behind. This was a huge mistake. Octavian's forces attacked. The enemy ships. Octavian won. It was not just a military victory. It was a moment that changed history forever. After the battle, Antony and Cleopatra returned. Rome was now with Octavian. His armies were marching toward Egypt. Both Antony and Cleopatra knew what was coming. They would be captured. They would be paraded to the streets like animals. They would be humiliated in front of the people. Neither of them could accept that. Mark Antony tried to kill himself with his sword, but his first attempt failed. Bleeding and dying slowly, he was taken to Cleopatra. Cleopatra, full of sorrow, pain, and pride, took her own life soon after. There are many stories about how she died. Some say she allowed a poisonous snake to bite her. Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. They died together, and with their death, the war was over. He took control of everything. He made Egypt part of the Roman Empire. He also captured Caesarion, the son of Cleopatra. Some believed Caesarion was the true heir of Caesar, but Octavian could not allow that. So he quietly ordered the boy's death. But it was also necessary if Octavian was to become the one and only ruler of Rome. Now there were no rivals left. Rome had started as a republic where leaders were elected and power was shared. But after years of blood and civil war, the people were tired. They didn't want weak leaders. They wanted peace. They wanted order. They wanted one man who could lead them. Octavian gave them all of that. That word was hated in Rome. Instead, in the year 27 BC, he was given a new title by the Senate, Augustus, which means the honored one. From that day forward, he was no longer just Octavian. He was Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. He became something Rome had never seen before. He controlled the Senate, even if they didn't realize it. He made laws, guided culture, reformed taxes, and created jobs. He built roads, repaired cities, and the people loved him for it. Even though he ruled like a king, he acted like a servant of the people. He was calm. He never needed to because he had already won the game. After the deaths of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and after the boy Caesarion was quietly removed, there were no enemies left, no more battles, no more rivals. Octavian, now called Augustus, had complete control. He ruled the army. He controlled the Senate. He ruled the lands of Rome from west to east. The Senate gave him honors. But here is what made Augustus different from all other powerful men before him. He did not destroy the government. He did not wear a crown or call himself king. He did not show off. Instead, he made it look like nothing changed. But secretly, everything changed. In that system, power was shared between different people. But for years, the Republic had been full of corruption, fighting, and civil war. The soldiers were loyal only to their generals. Augustus understood something important. If you want to keep power forever, don't make people afraid of you. So in the year 27 BC, he made a great public speech. He told the Senate, "I give back all power to the Senate and the people of Rome." But that was not true. It was a trick. A smart trick. The Senate, surprised and emotional, replied, "No, Augustus, you are the only one who can." And then they gave him a new name, Augustus, which means respected, great, sacred. It was not just a title. That day, the Roman Empire was born and Augustus became its first emperor, but he still called himself prince, which means first citizen, not king. This was his style. He held power, but looked humble. He changed everything, but made it feel like nothing changed. For almost 100 years, Rome had suffered civil wars, betrayals, but now, under Augustus, peace came. This long period of peace was called the Pax Romana, which means Roman peace. For over 40 years, people could travel across Rome without fear. Trade increased. Businesses grew. Farmers felt secure. The army protected the borders. Pirates were destroyed. Roads were built. People said, this was not just government, this was something deeper. He created order in a world that had been broken. One of the smartest things Augustus did in the Old Republic, soldiers were often loyal to their generals, not to the government. That's why there were so many civil wars. Soldiers followed whoever. Augustus said this must stop. So he created a professional army, gave them regular pay, retirement benefits, and land. Made the soldiers. He also created a special personal army called the Praetorian Guard to protect himself and his family. This was important because many powerful. Augustus never forgot what happened to Julius Caesar. The city of Rome had been damaged by fires, wars, and poor planning. Augustus, he said, "I found Rome a city of bricks." I leave it, a city of marble. He built new temples, new public buildings, clean and safe roads, aqueducts, which brought clean water into the city, public baths and theaters, a postal. He made Rome a capital that reflected the greatness of his empire. He gave more power to local governors in different parts of the empire. He made tax. He started a census system to count the population and understand the needs of each area. He created new laws and rules for morality, encouraging He didn't just rule with force. He ruled with structure. People began to say, Augustus doesn't just control the empire. From the outside, Augustus looked perfect, a strong leader, a patient man, a builder of peace. But he married a woman named Livia, who was smart and politically wise. They stayed married for decades, but they never had a son together. Her name was Julia. Julia's life was difficult. She was forced into several political marriages. Augustus hoped that through Julia's husbands he would find a strong. She was social, free-spirited, and often in trouble. Eventually, Augustus became ashamed of her behavior and banished her from Rome. The emperor who ruled the world could not control his own daughter. As Augustus became older, he thought deeply about what would happen after he died. He wanted peace to last. He didn't want another war to start after his death. So, he adopted a young man named Tiberius, the son of his wife Livia, and made him the next in line. He trained him, gave him jobs. Augustus also wrote down a list of his achievements called the Recesti, so people would remember. It included all the temples he built, the lands he conquered, the peace he brought, and the lives he changed. He knew something very important. Even emperors die. In his lifetime, Augustus never claimed to be a god. But after his death, many people worshipped him as one. They built temples in his name. They said he had brought light to darkness. But Augustus had always said, I am just a man who saved a broken world. Chapter 4. The Death of a Man. The Birth of Eternity. After ruling Rome for more than 40 years, Augustus was no longer young. His body, he suffered from pain, fever, and sickness again and again. But his mind was still sharp. Even in old age, he woke early. He read reports. He knew something very important. The greatest danger is not while I am alive. The greatest danger is what happens after I die. So, they were about protecting the future of Rome. Augustus often thought about his journey. He remembered the weak, sick boy. People laughed at the 18-year-old. The years of civil war, blood and betrayal, the deaths of Antony and Cleopatra, the long peace he created, the city he rebuilt, the empire he stabilized. He simply believed he had done what was necessary. He once said, I found Rome broken, I leave it strong. That sentence described his entire life. Who will rule after me? This was Augustus's greatest worry. He had lost many possible heirs. Some died young, some were weak, some disappointed him. Finally, Tiberius was not charming. He was not loved by the people, but he was disciplined, experienced, and strong. Augustus slowly gave Tiberius more responsibility. He wanted Rome to slowly accept Tiberius, not suddenly fear him. Augustus had learned this lesson from Julius Caesar's death. In the year 14, he decided to travel one last time. Not as a conqueror, but as a man returning home. He went to the town of Nola. His body was weak. He knew the end was near, but his mind was calm. He spoke to his friends. He spoke to his wife, Livia. There was no panic, no fear, no regret. According to Roman writers, Augustus asked a strange but powerful. He said, if I have played my part well, Applaud as I leave the stage. This sentence tells he saw life like a performance, a role that must be played carefully, seriously, and with purpose. And now the performance was over. Augustus died peacefully, and this alone was rare. Most Roman leaders were murdered, were betrayed, were killed violently. But Augustus died in peace because he had created peace. When news of his people cried in the streets, soldiers lowered their heads. The Senate went into mourning. Why? Because for most Romans alive at that time, he was not just an emperor. He was the man who ended chaos, the man who brought stability, the man who gave them peace, roads, food, and safety. After his death, the Senate made a decision. They declared Augustus a god. Temples were built in his name. Priests honored him. Festivals remembered him. But something even more powerful. The empire did not collapse. The army stayed loyal. The borders held. The government continued. This was the true test. Many rulers conquer land. Very few build systems. Let's stop for a moment and understand why Augustus matters so much even today. He did not rule by fear. He ruled by structure. He did not destroy Rome's traditions. He used them to hide his power. He understood human nature. People fear sudden change. People accept slow control. Augustus mastered this better than anyone in history. That is why his empire lasted for centuries. His name became a title for future emperors. His influence shaped Europe. Even today, modern systems of leadership, government, and power still carry his fingerprints. Augustus teaches us something very deep. You do not need to rush to win. You do not need to look strong to be. He won because he observed more than he spoke, planned more than he fought, waited more than he rushed, controlled emotions instead of reacting. The world remembers conquerors. Augustus was an architect of power. This story is not only history, it is a lesson in patience, strategy, self-control, long-term. And if you are learning English, this story has helped you learn how to follow long ideas, how to understand history in simple language, how to stay focused for long listening, how to grow. That is how language is truly learned, not by memorizing, but by living inside meaning. Augustus never wanted to be remembered as a king. He wanted to be, and history agreed. He did not just rule an empire. He created one, stabilized it, and left it standing. From a weak boy to a silent. This is the real story of Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. 7 life-changing lessons from the life of Augustus. 1. Power does not. Augustus didn't scream to be heard. He didn't fight to be seen. He waited. He planned. He observed. And in silence, he became the most powerful. You don't need to be loud to be strong. Be calm. Be patient. Power comes to those who think long-term. 2. Use your weakness as a weapon. People laughed at him, but he used that weakness to stay unnoticed until it was too late for his enemies. Lesson: if people underestimate you, let them. Shock the world with your success. 3. Don't fight every battle. Choose the right one. Augustus did not fight everyone. He made alliances even with enemies just to survive and grow. Lesson: you don't have to respond to every insult or challenge. Focus your energy. Win the war, not just one battle. 4. Build systems, not just moments. He didn't just rule, he created structure. He made laws, fixed taxes, organized. Lesson: don't just chase success. Build a life that can survive without noise. Build a system, not a fantasy. 5. He never reacted with emotion. He never made decisions in anger. He stayed cool, focused, and strategic. Lesson: learn emotional control. Never let feelings destroy your future. Let your actions speak for you. Augustus didn't tell people he was powerful. He proved it through results, peace, growth, and order. Lesson: don't talk about 7. Prepare for the end while you're still strong. He didn't wait for death to surprise him. He trained his heir. He wrote his achievements. Don't wait to plan your future. Start now. Think beyond today. Greatness is not about one victory. It's about what you leave behind. Those who are remembered for the wars they won, and those who are remembered for the peace they built. Augustus was not a warrior king. He was a mind builder, a system creator, a quiet emperor who ruled with patience and precision. He proved that you don't need a sword to win the world. You need discipline, and you need time. He never wanted to become a god, but history turned him into one. Not because he demanded, and today, as you finish his story, ask yourself, can I be like him in my own life? Can I rise without noise? Can I build without drama? Because if a weak boy from a broken family can become the builder of an empire, then what's stopping you? This was not just a history lesson. This was a roadmap. This was a message. You don't need to be born powerful. You just need to learn how power works and then build your empire. Thank you for watching. Subscribe now, because here we don't just tell stories, we help you grow stronger, one word at a time.